My granddaughter slipped me a crumbled napkin during Sunday brunch last week. Her hand was trembling so badly she almost knocked over her water glass when she slid it onto my lap. I looked down. In scribbled blue ink, it read, "Grandma, please, check the locker stepdad rented downtown, Unit 502. The code is Mom's birthday backwards." It also said, "Look before Friday." I glanced up at her, but she refused to make eye contact. She just stared at her untouched pancakes, while her stepfather, Julian, carried on a loud conversation about his recent golf game. That was the moment I knew. I knew something was horribly, violently wrong. Let me back up a bit so you understand the stakes here. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 65 years old. I live in a quiet, rainy suburb of Seattle. 4 years ago, my husband Arthur passed away from a sudden stroke. It shattered our family, but no one took it harder than our daughter, Sarah. Sarah was 39 when she lost her dad. She's a brilliant corporate lawyer, sharp, driven, the kind of woman who commands a room. But after Arthur died, she was vulnerable. About a year and a half later, she met Julian at a gallery opening. He was 40, handsome, incredibly charismatic, and seemed to hang on her every word. They were married within 7 months. It felt too fast. I told her that. But Sarah was lonely. Her first marriage had ended in a messy divorce a decade ago, and she'd been raising my granddaughter, Mia, mostly on her own. Mia is 16 now. She splits her time between her bio dad's apartment in Portland and her house here in Seattle. When Julian first arrived, Mia seemed okay with it. She told me her mom was finally smiling again. I wanted to be happy for them. I really did. Julian was charming to me too. He called me Mom. He brought me specialized fertilizer for my prize roses. He seemed like the perfect gentleman. But about 6 months ago, the atmosphere shifted. Sarah started looking exhausted constantly. She lost a startling amount of weight, and her skin turned a dull, pasty gray. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. "Just a big merger at the firm, Mom. Long hours." It made sense, initially, but then the confusion started. Sarah, who could recite case law from memory, started repeating herself in the middle of sentences. She'd get lost driving home on route she'd taken for 15 years. One afternoon, she called me in tears because she couldn't remember the alarm code to her own house. This wasn't stress. This was deterioration. Mia noticed it too. During her weekends in Seattle, I saw the terror in that girl's eyes. She would watch her mother like a hawk, tracking her movements. But whenever I tried to ask Mia what was wrong, she'd shut down. "It's fine, Grandma. Mom's just tired." Then came that brunch last Sunday. Julian insisted on hosting. He called it a family bonding meal. He made spinach quiche and mimosas. Sarah barely took 2 bites. She pushed the food around her plate, her movements sluggish and uncoordinated. Julian kept placing his hand on her shoulder, squeezing just a little too tight. "You have to eat, darling," he'd say, his voice smooth as silk. "You're fading away on us." Something about his tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That's when Mia passed me the napkin. I waited until I got back to my own house to fully process the message. My 16-year-old granddaughter was asking me to break into a storage locker to spy on her stepfather. Why did Mia know about this unit? And what could be inside that was so urgent she risked passing me a note right under Julian's nose? I didn't sleep a wink that night. I lay in the dark, thinking about Sarah's hollow eyes, Mia's shaking hands, and Julian's practiced, predatory smile. Monday morning, I drove to the storage facility near the industrial district. It was a cold, gray concrete building. I found Unit 502 on the 3rd floor. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I punched in the code. 120584. The light turned green. The lock clicked. The unit was mostly bare, except for 3 plastic bins stacked neatly in the back corner. I pulled out my phone and switched on the flashlight. The first bin was filled with paperwork, legal files. I started reading, and my knees almost gave out. It was a drafted last will and testament, Sarah's will, dated only 3 months ago. It left everything to Julian: the house, the investment portfolio, the life insurance, her share of the law partnership. Everything. There was absolutely no mention of Mia. My granddaughter, Sarah's entire world, had been erased from the document. But here's the kicker. The signature at the bottom looked like Sarah's, but it was wrong. The S was looped too tightly. Sarah has a very distinctive sweeping S, a habit from law school. This signature was a careful forgery, good, but not perfect to a mother's eye. The second bin made me want to vomit. Inside were medical supplies, latex gloves, empty vials, and a leather-bound journal. I opened the journal. It was a logbook. Julian's handwriting. The entries went back 4 months. He was detailing dosages, times, and reactions. October 12th, increased dosage to 15 milligrams. Confusion set in within an hour. Speech slurred. November 3rd, memory gaps significantly worse. She forgot her partner's name. Balance compromised. November 15th, she almost fell down the stairs. Perfect. He was documenting her decline because he was engineering it. I grabbed one of the empty vials and Googled the chemical name printed on the label: thallium sulfate, historically used as rat poison. Tasteless, odorless, it causes hair loss, nerve damage, confusion, and eventually heart failure. It mimics a slow degenerative illness. My daughter wasn't burnt out. She was being murdered. I opened the third bin. It contained surveillance photos. Photos of my house. Photos of me gardening. Photos of me at the library. Photos of me getting coffee. There were printouts of my bank accounts, a floor plan of my home with my bedroom and home office circled in red. And right on top was a copy of my life insurance policy. I had named Sarah the sole beneficiary years ago. The policy pays out $500,000. Attached to the policy was a yellow sticky note. On it, in Julian's neat architectural block lettering, was a single word: next. I nearly collapsed right there on the concrete floor. This wasn't just about Sarah's money. Julian was planning to kill my daughter, inherit her estate, and then come for me. I took photos of everything: the forged will, the poison log, the surveillance pictures. Then, with shaking hands, I put everything back exactly how I found it. I had to be smart. If I went to the cops now with just photos, Julian could spin a story. He could claim the journal was for a novel he was writing, or that Sarah was depressed and he was monitoring her meds. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to catch him in the act. That evening, Mia texted me. Just a blank message, then a question mark. I called her immediately. "Did you go?" she whispered. "I saw everything," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mia, how did you find that place?" "I tracked his GPS," she said, her voice cracking. "Last week, when Mom was sleeping, he left with those bins. I have a tracker on his car key. He doesn't know. I followed the signal. Then I guessed the code." "That was incredibly dangerous, Mia." "Grandma, he's killing her. Yesterday she fainted in the hallway. He called the ambulance, but he cleaned up her tea mug before they got there. The doctors think it's an autoimmune disease. They want to run tests on Friday." Friday? That's why the note said before Friday. "I heard him on the phone with his sister," Mia sobbed. "He said Friday would be the end of the road. He's going to finish it before the doctors figure it out." Friday was 2 days away. "Mia, listen to me," I said, channeling every ounce of strength I had left. "Do not eat or drink anything he touches. Buy packaged food, Hide it in your room. Can you do that?" "I've been living on protein bars for a week," she admitted. "Good girl. I'm going to fix this, but I need you to be brave for 48 more hours." I hung up the phone and sat at my kitchen table. I was a 65-year-old retired librarian who spent her days pruning roses, but I was about to go to war. I picked up the phone and dialed an old number, Detective Mark Henderson. He was Arthur's best friend, retired now, but he still knew everyone in the precinct. I told him everything. "Evelyn," Mark said, his voice grave, "we need to catch him dosing her. We need video." We hatched a plan. It was risky. It required me to lie to a sociopath's face. Tuesday morning, I called Julian. I put on my best, frail, worried mother voice. "Julian," I said, making my voice wobble, "I'm so worried about Sarah. She looked terrible at brunch. I was thinking maybe I should come stay for a few days, just to help out with cooking and cleaning. I can't bear to be alone in this big house worrying about her." There was a long pause on the other end. There was a pause on the line that felt like it lasted a century. I could practically hear the gears turning in Julian's head. He was calculating. Was having me there a risk, or was it an opportunity to orchestrate an accident for me too? Finally, his voice came back, smooth and syrupy. "Oh, Evelyn, that is so thoughtful of you. Sarah would love that. We don't want to be a burden, but yes, why don't you come over this afternoon?" "I'll pack a bag," I said. When I arrived at their house, Sarah answered the door. She looked even worse than she had on Sunday. Her skin had a translucent, grayish quality to it. Her hands trembled when she hugged me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she murmured. "Julian invited me," I lied. "I thought I could help out while you're feeling under the weather." Julian appeared behind her, smiling like a shark. "Come in, Mom, come in. I've set up the guest suite. It'll be so nice to have family close by." I had brought a suitcase, but hidden deep inside, rolled up in a pair of wool socks, were 3 miniature wireless cameras Mark had lent me. That evening, while Julian was busy in the kitchen preparing a healing broth, and Sarah was resting upstairs, I went to work. I placed the first camera in the kitchen, tucked discreetly behind a row of cookbooks, with a perfect view of the coffee machine. I placed the second one in the dining room, hidden inside a decorative fern. The third went in the upstairs hallway, pointed directly at their bedroom door. Mia knew I was there, but we had agreed to play it cool. No whispering in corners. When she came down for dinner, she just gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Dinner was excruciating. Julian had made a mushroom risotto. I watched, my heart in my throat, as he served the plates. He served mine, then Mia's, then he went back to the pot, stirred in a pinch of something from a small ramekin on the counter, and scooped a serving onto Sarah's plate. "Special herbs for your immune system, darling," he said as he set it down in front of her. Sarah ate mechanically, like a robot running out of battery. Mia pushed her food around, terrified. I forced myself to eat, complimenting Julian on his cooking, playing the role of the oblivious, grateful mother-in-law. After dinner, Sarah went upstairs to collapse in bed. Mia went to her room to study. That left me alone with Julian. He made me a cup of herbal tea. I watched his hands the entire time. He didn't add anything to mine. He just sat across from me, smiling that perfect, practiced smile. "Sarah is so lucky to have you," he said. "Not every daughter has a mother who cares this much." "She's my only child," I said, leaning into the role. "After Arthur died, she's all I have left." "Well, and Mia," Julian corrected gently. "Of course, Mia, too." He took a sip of his wine. "You know, Evelyn, seeing Sarah like this makes you think about the future. God forbid if anything were to happen. Is your estate planning all in order? It can be such a mess for families if the paperwork isn't clear." There it was. He wasn't even being subtle. He was already spending my money in his head. "Oh, it's all updated," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Everything goes to Sarah, and if anything happens to her, it all goes into a trust for Mia. Family first." Julian's smile tightened just a fraction, a tiny twitch near his eye. "Very sensible." That night, I lay in the guest room with my laptop, watching the live feed from the cameras Mark had set up. At 11:47 p.m., the hallway camera triggered. Julian emerged from the master bedroom. He was moving quietly, wearing his silk pajamas. I held my breath as he walked down the stairs. I switched to the kitchen camera. He went straight to a high cabinet above the fridge, the one where they kept the holiday liquor. He reached all the way to the back and pulled out a small glass vial and a syringe. Then he went to the coffee machine. Julian always prepped the coffee the night before, Sarah's special morning blend. He uncorked the vial and used the syringe to drip a clear liquid directly into the coffee grounds. He measured it with terrifying precision. When he was done, he hid the vial, wiped the counter, and went back upstairs. I had him. I had video evidence of him poisoning her. But I couldn't sleep. I knew that coffee was sitting there, a loaded gun waiting for morning. At 5:30 a.m., I crept downstairs. I took the filter basket out of the machine and dumped the tainted grounds into the garbage disposal, running the water until they were gone. I replaced them with fresh grounds from the pantry. When Julian came down at 6:30, I was already sitting at the table reading a magazine. "Morning, Julian," I chirped. I couldn't sleep, so I made a fresh pot of coffee. The grounds in the machine looked a bit stale, so I tossed them. "Hope you don't mind." He froze. For a split second, the mask dropped, and I saw pure, unadulterated rage in his eyes. Then the smile snapped back into place. "Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Mom." Sarah came down at 7 a.m. She was stumbling. She said she'd been sick all night. "We need to go to the hospital," I said firmly. "Now." "No," Julian interjected, stepping between us. "She has the appointment with the specialist at 2 p.m. We wait for that. I don't want to exhaust her with the ER." "I really think," I started. "I said we wait," Julian snapped. His voice was cold, hard. The doorbell rang at 8:15. Julian looked annoyed. Who on earth is that? He opened the door. Standing there was Detective Henderson and 3 uniformed officers. "Can I help you?" Julian asked, his charm setting to maximum. "Mr. Julian Black?" Detective Henderson asked. "I have a warrant to search these premises." Julian laughed, a nervous, incredulous sound. "A warrant? This is ridiculous! Sarah, tell them!" Sarah looked around, confused and swaying. Mia ran over and grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her back against the wall. "Actually, officers," I said, standing up from the table, "I have something that might help." I held up my phone. I had the video clip from last night queued up. "You've been spying on us?" Julian hissed, spinning around to face me. "In my own house?" "I've been protecting my daughter, which is more than you've been doing." The police found everything. They found the vial of thallium hidden in the liquor cabinet. They found the syringe. They logged the logbook in the storage unit detailing every dose he'd given her. Julian started talking the second the handcuffs clicked. He tried to claim Sarah was suicidal and he was helping her. He claimed the will was her idea. He claimed the poison was for a rat problem. None of it stuck. Forensics found his fingerprints on the forged will. They also found his sister's fingerprints. She had notarized it. They arrested her an hour later. Once they started digging into Julian's past, the floodgates opened. He had been married twice before. Both wives had died under tragic circumstances, one from sudden heart failure, the other from an accidental overdose. Neither had been autopsied thoroughly. They exhumed both bodies. Both tested positive for heavy metal poisoning. Sarah was rushed to the hospital. The doctors confirmed she had lethal levels of thallium in her system. If she had drunk that coffee that morning, she would have been dead by the weekend. It took months for Sarah to recover physically. The betrayal? That will take longer to heal. She had loved him. She had trusted him with her life and her child. Julian was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The judge called him a predator of the worst kind. We sold that house. Too many bad memories. Sarah and Mia moved into a place down the street from me. Mia's 17 now. She wants to be a forensic accountant. She says she wants to catch bad guys who hide in the numbers. As for me, I learned that you can't always see evil coming. It doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a charming man in a suit who brings you fertilizer for your roses. But I also learned that you have to trust your gut. And more importantly, you have to listen to the quiet ones. Mia saved her mother's life because she was brave enough to slip me that note. And I'm just glad I was smart enough to read it. Watch out for your family. And if your granddaughter tells you something is wrong, believe her.